The smoke could be seen for miles. In the eerie quiet of North Dakota, a fully loaded passenger jet, for reasons no one quite understands, crashes into an open field and erupts into a ball of flame. A tragedy? Of course. Something more? Perhaps. In fact, 1/3 of Americans tell pollsters they think the government is hiding what really happened. Which brings us to the final twist. That plane crash never happened, but those poll results did. Are we living in a golden age of conspiracy theories? Well, about 1 in 4 Americans say airplanes are spraying us with harmful chemtrails. They're not, those are ice crystals, and that science was worked out about 85 years ago. Nearly 40% of Americans think the government is hiding evidence of aliens, which could be true, but given the government's track record for secrecy, probably not. And in 2023, 41% of Americans said they believe a single group of people secretly controls world events. And if you're tempted by that theory, remember that a few years ago, a container ship got stuck in the Suez Canal, and this is how we tried to get it out. So, if this all-powerful cabal really exists, they're not great at this. And if all this sounds like we're living in a uniquely paranoid era, we're not. Yes, social media makes conspiracy theories more visible and spreads them faster, but pick pretty much any point in history and you'll find the latest technology spreading ideas that are, let's say, creative. In the 1400s, the new printing press produced a book about witchcraft that threw Europe into such a frenzy that every new printing of it spiked the number of witch trials. In the 1800s, American newspapers ran stories alleging that the Pope was part of a conspiracy to bring down the federal government. And that wasn't a fringe view. In fact, it became the backbone of a major American political party, the members of whom, had they lived to see this, would have shit themselves. Get to the online era, and you've got things like people denying the moon landing happened. It did happen, but if you don't believe that, we'd recommend not mentioning it to Buzz Aldrin.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
So, what is it that makes conspiracy theories so irresistible? That question is the focus of the social psychologist Karen Douglas, who's found 3 tendencies at work. The first is a need for certainty. A conspiracy theory can provide you with a tidy explanation for a complicated or confusing event. So, rather than we don't know exactly what happened to the Malaysia Airlines flight, well, it got sucked into a black hole. The second is a sense of control. So, a child develops autism, and it's not an unpredictable event. It's the fault of pharma companies covering up the effects of vaccines, which gives you a way to avoid it. The third is the need to feel good about yourself and your group. So, only members of a small, enlightened minority are discerning enough to know that the world is actually flat. But life often doesn't work like this. Major events can have boring, random explanations. We aren't always certain. We don't always have control. For a tangible example, consider the 9/11 conspiracy theories. That day was terrifying. No one knew what was happening. No one felt in control, which led some people to prefer the idea of an inside job by the government over the thought that 19 random hijackers could kill nearly 3,000 Americans. Conspiracy theorists claimed the jets couldn't really have brought the towers down. They noted that the maximum temperature of burning jet fuel is 1,500 degrees, whereas it takes a temperature of around 2,750 degrees to melt steel. So they argued it must have been a controlled demolition. When the magazine Popular Mechanics debunked that, showing a steel beam can lose half its strength and thus lead to a collapse at just 1,100 degrees, its editor, Jim Meigs, thought readers would be reassured. That was not the reaction. Instead, Popular Mechanics was accused of being a front for the Mossad. and the Illuminati, and the CIA. All clearly part of a dastardly government plot to get the American people into woodworking. Which gets to another trait. Conspiracy theories are often non-falsifiable, which is a fancy way of saying that there's no way to prove them wrong. Any evidence that might disprove them can just be interpreted as proof the cover-up is working, because the audience often wants to believe. Which is why, when pollsters at Chapman University asked about that fake plane crash in North Dakota, about 1/3 of respondents immediately assumed there was a government cover-up of a thing that never happened. Now, to be fair, terrible things do get hidden from the public. Watergate was real. The tobacco industry was lying about their product for decades. The CIA really did experiment on people with LSD in the 60s. But there's a reason we know all of that. Hiding the truth usually requires lots of people's cooperation. And if enough people know a horrible secret, it usually comes out. A journalist is going to follow the clues. A whistleblower is going to alert the public. A conspirator is going to make a mistake. It happens all the time. In fact, this pattern is so clear that in 2016, an Oxford physicist built a mathematical formula for how long a conspiracy could stay secret. For faking the moon landing, he calculated that it would have required hundreds of thousands of people to keep the secret, and that even if they had all tried, it would have leaked in under 4 years. And it's not just that conspiracies are really hard to keep quiet, they're also really hard to pull off. For an example of that, consider the 100% true conspiracy that killed a president of the United States. We're talking, of course, about Abraham Lincoln. While it's often forgotten today, Lincoln was only one of several targets meant to be killed on the night of April 14, 1865. And the reason no one remembers this is because every other aspect of the plot went wrong. The guy who was supposed to kill Vice President Andrew Johnson got drunk in a hotel bar and lost his nerve. The assassin who was sent after Secretary of State William Seward badly injured him, but failed to kill him, despite the fact that Seward was in bed and heavily medicated because of a recent carriage accident. Ulysses S. Grant was supposed to be with Lincoln that evening and could have just as easily been killed, but he skipped the play to catch a train to New Jersey. Historians are still debating which was the worse fate. Now, contrast Lincoln's killing with John F. Kennedy's. Despite investigation after investigation concluding that Lee Harvey Oswald fired the shots, despite multiple witnesses to Oswald killing a Dallas police officer the same day, despite Oswald already having one assassination attempt under his belt, the conspiracy idea just won't go away. To this day, a majority of Americans believe it. And who did they think really did it? Well, the CIA, the military-industrial complex, the mafia, Cuba, Lyndon Johnson, George H.W. Bush, J. Edgar Hoover, Earl Warren, the FBI, the Secret Service, the John Birch Society, Texas right-wing extremists, the KGB, Aristotle Onassis, Nikita Khrushchev, the South Vietnamese, a French heroin syndicate, and Ted Cruz's dad for some reason. Or some combination of the above. Because in the world of conspiracy theories, a vast, world-changing plot can go undetected for over 60 years. And in the world of real conspiracies, the Lincoln conspirators couldn't kill a guy who was so hopped up on pain meds that he couldn't defend himself. And that's the ultimate point here. Conspiracy theories rely on a conception of the world that doesn't match reality. Events can happen randomly. Plots go wrong. People can't keep secrets. And there is no secret cabal running the world. And if you doubt that, ask this guy.